What is going on, everyone? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 2 live stream for this week's Arnold Palmer Invitational. Gonna break down betting, DFS, and props for tomorrow and give you guys all the information that you need to go out there and get your research started. So we'll start off with a look at the golf course, then the DFS, and then prop side of things to give you a little idea of the schedule for this live stream. Of course, as well as any questions that you have down in live chat. I couldn't resist. I was supposed to go up to the API on Saturday. Well, I'm going to be there for tomorrow's round through Sunday. So ended up changing my staying arrangements a little bit and was able to get that to work. So going to head up there tomorrow morning, probably trying to get there a little bit before noon and catch most of that round 2 action. I was looking forward to it. First off, some roll call down in chat. As you guys are starting to fill into the live stream here, go ahead and let me know down in the live chat who you got as your top scorer for round 2 showdown. So whether it's somebody going nuclear low, somebody just making a ton of birdies like you had with a few players today, let me know who one of your top fantasy scores is going to be and somebody that you're expecting to go low over there on Friday. First off, welcome on in. We have Barry down there. Says round 2, let's go. Studs rebound. I think so, right? Especially the early studs. And part of that is the weather edge that we have here for round 2, which I think is going to be sneaky good. I think this round 2 showdown slate is setting up pretty good from the DFS perspective because we got a little weather edge we can lean into. Also, some game theory that I think really favors a few of the AM players. So yeah, for sure, especially the early guys, which speaking of, let's talk why I'm so bullish about these AMT times. So if we go over here to the hole-by-hole stats on datagolf.com, which is, of course, one of the best databases out there, not the best, BTN, bet the number, I think is a little bit better. Right? I'm partial to that, of course. But over here, we can split it by the wave, right? Take a look at some of the quote-unquote wave-by-wave stats. Now, I put that in quotations, kind of make fun of it a little bit because there's not waves out there in this limited field. But if you just split it down the middle and look at the first half of tee times versus the last half of tee times, there was about a 1.5 stroke difference, right? That PM wave played slightly over par, whereas the quote unquote morning wave, and again, put that in quotes because there isn't, a defined wave advantage out there, was a 1.5 strokes easier, right? 1.3 strokes under par. You had a lot of your ceiling rounds in the AM wave. And in fact, if we take a look at the leaderboard, most of the guys up there that are -3 or better, with the exception of, I think, Shane Lowry, Sahith Theegala was also a PMT time. There might have been like 1 or 2 guys over here at -3 that had a later tee time. I know Emiliano Grillo, right, was one of those players. A vast majority of them either teed off the first maybe hour of tee times, or at the very least, like the first 2.5 hours of tee times. That would mean for out there in round 2, like something around like a 9, maybe 9:30 a.m. tee time, maybe towards the latter end, like 10 a.m. local time, being the cutoff there. Those were the players that saw a distinct advantage. And it wasn't just in terms of the leaderboard position. There were a lot more birdies made towards the beginning of the day. If we split it by wave, you'll see the birdie average was about 0.3 higher in the morning wave. And if we take a look at some of the approach stats, I think this is where it was most obvious. The reason for the easier conditions were they had dartboards out there, right? Conditions were a lot softer out there at the beginning half of the day, and you saw players take advantage of that. So outside of Tom Hoge, you had a late-ish morning tee time. So I wouldn't say he was one of the first players off. Guys like Brian Harmon, guys like Hideki Matsuyama, right, were extremely early tee times. Justin Lauer, guys like Nick Taylor, I know had an early tee time. A vast majority of the players that gained over a stroke on approach, I think with the exception of like 5 players, right, of that top 20, all were players that went off early. So that's why we saw that advantage. It was a whole 1.5 stroke advantage when it was all said and done. Now, part of that could have been noise. Part of that could have been variance because of the small field aspect. But on a Florida golf course, we normally expect that kind of split between the 2 waves. It's more receptive in the morning, normally a little bit calmer, right, over there in the morning hours. And that's exactly what we got. The course conditions, the forecast was pretty flat, right? When we looked over there at the HRRR model on Wednesday, same thing for Friday, right? So just taking a look at this forecast, they're calling for it to be calm pretty much the entire day. In reality, around like noon to maybe like 2:30 local time, the winds kicked up quite a bit, right? They talked about it on the broadcast. The ESPN Plus broadcast was the main window where those winds actually kicked up. and it had an impact on play, right? The first, let's say 5-6 holes for like Cam Young, like those sort of tee times didn't go very well, right? Like Max Homa was over par even after the first 2 par 5s. Cam Young, right, had a really bad start. Victor Hovland, right, did not have the best start on those first few holes. That was when the wind was really kicking up. So it's worth noting that I would expect that same kind of effect, right? They're calling for pretty much an identical forecast to what we saw there on the Wednesday live stream, which I just don't buy, right? Down here in Florida, being a local, being somebody that is extremely acclimated to these conditions, by the time I get there to the golf course tomorrow, I'm expecting there to at least be some kind of breeze out there, if not some pretty gusty winds in the afternoon. So they can try and tell us that it's going to be completely still out there. I'll buy it when I see it, is what I'll say about that. Just knowing Florida weather, knowing what I saw today in terms of the weather as well. So when we're attacking the showdown slate, or even for props, if I'm going to take a positive stance on a player, right? If I'm going to get over the field on somebody for showdown, if I'm going to take like an over for birdies or an under on strokes, I need them to be playing early, right? I need them to have those nut conditions, whether it's the weather or whether it's those receptive greens, which I think was probably the biggest effect, right? You can see the impact right out here on these shots gained approach stats. That's how I'm going to be attacking the round 2 showdown slate. So they've got game theory we can mix into that, of course, right, to generate even more of an edge over there from the DFS side. But just from the weather perspective alone, I think we have quite a big edge out there for Friday if we just go out there and play the right tee time. So we're going to talk about this quite a bit, right, when we go through our DFS plays, even for props, right? We're going to be trying to take those positive stance plays on the guys going off early, and then trying to fade and maybe, take stances against players that are going off a little bit later on, right? Whether it's our fades for DFS or whether it's potentially overs on strokes or under on birdies for some of the prop apps. It's going to be for some of the later tee times, right? Perhaps finding players that aren't playing that well right through the first 2 rounds that aren't going to have good conditions out there for Friday. So that's it for the weather. That's it for the course. I'll be able to give you guys a better idea of what's going to happen out there when I get out onto the grounds tomorrow, right, and actually see some of the play. But we have our first takedown to chat. So Jacob, the first to answer the question, which, by the way, if you're just tuning us, let me know who you think is the nut showdown play for tomorrow. So the player that you think is going to go the lowest. Jacob says Cam Young, and I think he's an intriguing option for that, right? So he's not one of the highlighted plays that I have here for the live stream, but I will say that I am playing him out there for tomorrow. Checks a few boxes for me. So I think it's a really sharp play. I think it's a sharp take too. He's going to be low owned for DFS, right? He's +1, right? So there's going to be a little bit of lower steam on him, right? Going into Friday's action. He's got the early tee time, right? 9:40 a.m. and fits the golf course to a tee, right? 2 top 13 finishes in a row. He's got the course history, the skill set. I mean, we know that with Cam Young, and relatively low ownership. Like, sign me up, right? I'd rather have him than Sam Burns, right, teeing off at 1:10 p.m. He's going to get the better conditions. He's lower owned, and like you said, is a really good bounce back candidate out there for round 2. So I agree with that. If I'm going to give my take out there, I'm asking for your take. My number 1 bounce back candidate would be Rory McIlroy, right? And it's for a lot of the same reasons that, you take a Cam Young, for example. Fits the golf course, elite level course history, right? That is, of course, synonymous with Rory McIlroy at Bay Hill. He's also relatively early tee time. Now, this 10:10 a.m. tee time is probably like the latest I'd consider for a quote unquote like early tee time, right? Out there at 10:10 a.m. But we'll have relatively low winds for most of his round. I mean, he should finish by like 1-2 p.m. The course might start to bake out towards his back 9, but his front 9 is going to be played in perfect conditions. So I'm going to go Rory McIlroy for my take for the round 2 nuclear play. But if you can get it down in chat, we'll say this for the live chat, you get a free month of the Patreon. It has to be the highest Draftkings score. So that's the metric that we're going to use to identify who's actually the top nuts play. But if you get the guy who goes the lowest, there's a good chance he's probably going to be the best Draftkings score. So go ahead and do that if you guys haven't already. Cam Young's already taken. You can't double up on plays. I'll just say that much. So Cam Young's taken. You have to choose somebody else, and so on and so forth, right? As other people go out there and guess. Let's go ahead and go through some of the plays I like here, though. So I've already mentioned the weather edge, right, that I think that we have here for Friday, but you also want to consider game theory. So somebody like a Justin Thomas, for example, right, that is an AM tee time, has slightly less utility than a player like a Tommy Fleetwood because of the ownership angle, right? He's about double the ownership as somebody like a Tommy Fleetwood. And though I am playing a Justin Thomas, just for full transparency, right, I'm making room for JT in my player pool from a one-to-one basis in like a single entry contest, for example. I would much prefer Tommy Fleetwood on tomorrow's kind of slate. This is a single round of golf, right? It is a extremely variant sport to begin with, and that is over 4 round sample sizes. When you only give players 18 holes to work with, it can go one direction or the other real quickly, right? You have a lot of that single round of variance. And when you have somebody that's half the ownership from the Showdown angle, is also an AMT time and has elite level course history like a Tommy Fleetwood, I'll make that pivot 10 times out of 10. You can say a lot of the same things about Berger, right? Doesn't have that elite level course history, but is another elite tier player that is half the ownership of some of the other chalky guys, right? Like Sam Burns, I've got it 23%. Will Zalatoris, right? I've got it 21.3% ownership. I would much rather take a pivot like an Berger, a Tommy Fleetwood, Rory McIlroy, right? I wouldn't consider him a pivot, right? Up there at 20.2%. But the further down the board I go, the more so I'm looking for these pivot type of players, right? So it's not just my 8, 9K players down here in the 6, 7K range, 8K range, right? I'm looking for players to get different. Somebody like a Sungjae, I've got it 7.2% ownership. Also super early tee time, right? 8:55 a.m. local time tee time, and played okay round one, right? Played slightly better than the field average with a -1 score. These are the type of guys I love, right? Not a lot of steam because the recent form isn't great for Sungjae, but in round one, really did look a lot better than what we've seen over the last month or so. So I saw enough to give me some optimism out there for the second round of action. And historically, right, Sungjae is a really good showdown scorer, right? He makes a lot of birdies, right? There have been plenty of years on tour where he's led the tour in birdie production. So I like that for the single round sample. Harris English, another elite tier course history guy. Now, 10.9% ownership is actually a little bit steep, but the reason why I would say it's not out of hand is we've got Shane Lowry, right? 18.1%. We have Minwoo, who I've got at 17.5%. I mean, even a Keegan, Chris Kirk, right, are getting some attention themselves. So Harris English, right, if we compare him to some of the cheaper options down here in the 7K range, maybe is carrying some extra ownership, but I'll get to him with that early tee time, right, 9:20 a.m. If you're going to play somebody with some ownership out here for Friday, make it somebody that fits that weather narrative, right, that is going out there and ball striking the ball well. What I like for Harry is, of course, that experience, right? He's had a lot of spike rounds around the API. And 10.9%, if I'm playing them in 20% of my lineups, I can get the leverage I'm looking for. That's just, it's not asking too much, right? If I had to play him at 25, 30%, I might double, give that a little bit of a second thought. But at that kind of ownership number, it's something I'm willing to do at least. I don't know about you guys. Eric Van Rooyen at 7,200. He's teeing off really early, right? 7:55, I believe, is the first, second group out over there at 7:55. Didn't play that horribly in round one, right? Shot even par. So a lot of your casual golf fans, of course, are expecting more from pretty much everyone in the field. But reality is he played like 0.3, 0.4 shots, worse, right, than what we saw for the field. EVR was coming in with some of the best form in the field, right? In fact, was number 8 in terms of recent form ranking. And even his long-term stuff, he was number 8 in the field in that category. So overall, he was my number 5 ranked player in the field heading into the week. So if he's going to be sub 10%, or he's 7,200, who's actually a little bit more expensive out here for Showdown than what he was for your 4-round stuff, I'll take that as a little bit of a pivot play, right? He's got the nuts conditions this time, and now he's not going to have to worry about all those firm greens. Cam Davis, another high upside early tee time, $6,800. I've got him at sub 3% ownership. And then the last play I'll give you guys here in terms of a highlighted play, of course, guys, the rest of my player pool is posted on my Patreon page, including the rest of the modeling and projections, but it's Grayson Murray at $6,100, right? 7:55 a.m. tee time. So in that second group out that I was mentioning before, and really anyone can go low at this course if you ball strike it well. And Grayson Murray, while he's not a very consistent player, does have rounds and does have tournaments where he goes out there and spikes with the ball striking, right? That's his main strength. He's not the most consistent putter. Now, to start 2024, he's been a lot better putter, which is why he's, went out there and won, right, at the Sony Open. It's why he's been a lot more consistent here in this calendar year. At $6,100, he has enough firepower to shoot something low. So these are far from the only plays I'm taking, right? A Cam Davis, a Grayson Murray down low, but they are the types of players that I'm looking for, right? Cam Davis, another extremely high firepower player, right? Maybe a little bit volatile, kind of like Grayson Murray, but in Showdown, we want to embrace that, right? We want that volatility. We want somebody to go out there, spike a 5-6 birdie round. And when Cam Davis has his best stuff, same thing with Grayson Murray, that is exactly what they produce, right? They go out there, they might mix in 3-4 bogeys, but they'll have that 6-7 birdie rounds that captures a lot of those DraftKings fantasy points. So that's what I'm looking at from the Showdown perspective. I'm embracing the quote unquote weather edge that we have, which again, if you look at the weather forecast, it's pretty much the same forecast that we had for today. And that led to a 1.5 stroke advantage. So I would say the cutoff line would be right around 10 a.m. Right. Again, Rory McIlroy would probably be pushing it a little bit with somebody that I'd call an AM tee time. Same thing with Berger, right? At a 10:20, but like 9:30. That's early, right? 8:55 for Sun GM, 7:55 like we have for EVR and Grayson Murray are guys that are going to get an even bigger advantage, right, than some of those later guys in terms of tee times. So that's what I would look at for Showdown. In terms of stats, I do want to bring up that shots gained list again and show you guys a few of the guys that I think are hitting the ball well and potentially could carry that into round two. Eric Cole goes low. I like that take. Xander's going to go low. You got him at -8. Okay. I like that. Aberg for low score. All right. You've sold you on EVR. He's got that nuclear round in him. And Clint Turner says Justin Thomas. Okay. I think those are all good takes, right? They're all early tee times. Xander Schauffele, what has he got, a 10 a.m. tee time? It's early enough for me, right? Like I said, like that 10 a.m. mark is probably that cutoff line. I like it, guys. I like what you're thinking there. So in terms of some of the shots gained metrics, in terms of approach play, Hoagie had an insane day. Now, he shot even par, right? We sort this by approach. Everyone else that gained this much on approach was shooting like 3, 4, 5 under par. I mean, literally everyone, right? Up here towards the top of the board. And then you have Tom Hoagie at even par. His putter was the main reason for that. Lost over 3.5 strokes to the field. His tee time's not great. In fact, if we go over here to tee times, I believe he's right around noon. But let me go ahead and double check and give you his exact tee time. But it's not ideal. Yeah, he's got an 11:55 a.m. tee time, so pretty much right at noon. And if he had, like, let's say a 10 a.m. tee time, he would probably be the nut Showdown play. So if you're willing to overlook that weather edge and just try and take somebody that was hitting the ball well, Tom Hoagie at least had that going for him out there round one. Brian Harmon, a lot of these other guys were just AM tee times to begin with. So a lot of them don't fit our weather edge. Harris English, right? He hit the ball well in approach, and he's going to be a relatively early tee time. Let's find a few others here. Milian Grillo played well in approach. He's also an AM tee time. So I'm playing him even with some ownership out there for Showdown. Grayson Murray, another reason I'm playing him, right, with that early tee time. Justin Thomas, a reason I'm taking him as a relatively chalky player, right, is he gained in pretty much all 4 categories except for the putter, which is very typical of Justin Thomas, but maybe he flips that out there for Friday. Let's find a few others on here. That's it for a lot of these other guys were AM tee times. So my theory out there for the golf course is that the reason why it played a whole stroke and a half easier wasn't so much the wind. It was all about this approach play, because outside of like those few, 4 or 5 guys that we just went through, the rest all played early, right? The rest are all going to have like middle to maybe later tee times out there for round 2, which I think is really telling of what we had in terms of conditions. So that's what I'm playing out there for Friday. I think it's going to lead to a pretty solid edge when it comes to Showdown. So I'm playing it with a little bit of extra units out there for Friday's action. And it helps that I'm out there on the golf course, right? It gives me a little bit more to sweat. In terms of props, let's see if we actually have a board for once. So we had you can see that live golf slip that I had up there, which we'll go through some live golf stuff. So those 2 players I took, we'll talk about later on. But what I want to look at right now is this PGA board, which just dropped. And I already had an idea of what I wanted to do. I want to find elite AM players. So guys that I'd consider to be at least like a top maybe 20 player in the world that have an early tee time at 70.5 strokes or better. So Xander Schauffele fits that right off the bat. Max Homa fits that right off the bat. I mean, I want to get after this quickly before any sort of movement. Let's see. We have JT we could throw into that too. Jordan Spieth is another guy at 70.5. Any of these guys that I would consider an elite tier player, I'll take them at 70.5 strokes. So the best way to do this is going to be to split these into 2-mans, potentially 3-man slips you might be able to get away with. But let me see what we're working with in terms of multiplier. These guys have too late of tee times for me to consider them as a really good play. Cantlay is at 70.5. He played horribly in round one, but he could easily turn that around. Let's figure this out. So I'm going to go Xander. Oh, I'm just realizing that I'm not going to have a bunch of slips to work with out here for this exposure. So I would enter them in 2-mans. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take all these props together. Again, these are free slips, right? It's a $1 slip. I could really care less about the actual payout. I just want to be able to track the props out there tomorrow for my Patreon and you guys out there, right? From the Twitter perspective. So I would mix and match these. I would not play them in a 5-man slip like I'm about to here. So what was the other one I wanted to mix in? It wasn't Fleetwood, wasn't Cam Young. Those two are leans I would take, though. I guess Patrick Cantlay, right? We can take with the 8:33 tee time. We're going to take these 5 props is what we're going to take here for the live stream. So it's 5 guys at 70.5. The scoring average of the morning, right, was like 1.2 under par. Because these guys are all top 20 players in the world, right? They project well more than half a stroke better than that, right? So I'm projecting them for under 70 strokes over there at 70.5, right? That gives us quite a bit of line value. And, you know, Patrick Cantlay didn't play well, but the rest of these guys all played pretty well for round one, right? They all played a lot better than what you had for the PM scoring average. My apologies, guys. Lovely. My bad about that again. But yeah, Patrick Cantlay, I'd still take it 70.5 because it's a 1-round sample, right? I'm not going to hold it against him that much. What do I think the cut's going to be? Well, so there's a few aspects to that, right? So it's the top 50 in ties that'll be making the weekend, but we also have to consider that it's anyone within 10 of the lead. So the lead as of right now is -6. I think the lead after 36 holes could be anything from -8 to -10. So I would say this top 50 number might actually be a little bit more important than the within 10 shots. I'll say +2 is probably the cut line. I think it will drift back a little bit, right? I think that in general, right, conditions are going to be right around even par for the day. PM wave will probably play slightly over par. Morning wave's probably going to play slightly under par, kind of like you saw for round one. So yeah, I'd say +2. That'd be my best guess. If the winning score after 2 rounds is only like -8, that would mean that anyone +2 or better is guaranteed to make it, and potentially that, you know, that top 50 scores even at like +3 at that point. So my guess would be +2. Let me look at what they're saying. So they've got it either +1 or +2. I would probably side towards the +2 side. Let's see. So we have these strokes props that we can mix in. Outside of that, I didn't look at a lot of the birdie stuff, but there's probably a few birdie props that we can take too. So let me go through there. There were also a few strokes props that I want to point out as well. So it was the Fleetwood under. It was also this Cam Young under, relatively early tee times. I mean, Morikawa at 10:10, I mean, is a decently early tee time. I don't know if it'd say he's like a super early, but we'll see. Maybe we mix that in. These two for sure, I definitely like. Matty Fitz, I know he didn't have the best first round, but to shoot under par, that's probably not the worst play. What else do we have? Sungjae Im, right, at 71.5. I don't think it's going to let me enter this. I think I'm already at my 3-slip limit for the day. But these are also players that I'd consider entering these for. So let me see. Is it going to let me enter? No. Yeah, I'm at that limit. I'm out there for the champions mode over here in Underdog. But that's what I'd be looking at on that side. Anyone down in chat, if you guys are able to bring up the prize picks board, that would be unbelievably clutch when it comes to giving you guys some content. They might not even have it up there for round 2 yet, but if they do have it up and you guys have access to it, and you're in my Discord, go ahead and let me know. If not, I'll go ahead and just probably not do it for that. What's going on, Samuel? Hopefully you're having a good day. So tilting watching your players start off strong, then dropping back so quick. Yeah, and it kind of went the other way for a few guys too, right? Like Victor Hovland, I was tilted as hell after 3 holes. He was +3 through 3, if you guys weren't tracking him. And he ended up -1 by the end of the day. He made 5 birdies, so we got plenty of Draftkings points, right, by going out there and making those birdies. It's a crazy golf course. It's kind of like PGA National, where you kind of got to have this perspective heading in where that's going to happen, right? You're going to have guys that inexplicably blow up, right? Shoot like +6, +7. But at the same time, if you play well, you're still going to see rounds like -6, -7 too. So it's extremely entertaining, but as you said, very tilting as well when it's your guys that aren't playing well, especially there on that back 9, which today the back 9 played a whole stroke or nearly a stroke under par, whereas the front 9 played 0.4 strokes over par. So that was a little bit of the tale of 2 9s when it came to the scoring averages out there. And normally I think it's flipped, right? This back 9 is normally really tough out there at API. Front 9's tough too, right? Don't get me wrong. It normally plays over par too, but this back 9 normally does not play 0.87 strokes under par. So that was a little bit surprising out there for round 1. Let's see any Prize Pick shit. Prize Picks has Scotty and Rory at 70 strokes. What are they at on I know Scotty's at 69.5 over here on Underdog. What do they have Rory at? 70? Yeah, so I would say 70 it's not a horrible projection. It's probably actually maybe 0.5 too high. I'd probably put him at 69.5. I don't hate that. Thoughts on Pavon bouncing back? I think he's playing really good golf. The issue I would have is the tee time, right? I'm pretty sure he's got one of the later tee times, but let me go ahead and fact check myself there before I start spewing potential BS. But where is he at? Yeah, he's got a late tee time, 1:30 p.m. I think he's going to play better than he did round 1, right? He might shoot like -1, -2. But I don't know if he's going to have that spike round. He said Aberg's at 71, Homa's at 71. Love Aberg and Homa at 71 then. Those are 2 props I would 1,000% take. Again, the morning scoring average was lower than 71 today. Now, round 2 setup might be a little bit harder. Who knows, right? As the course gets firmer as the week goes on, but it's still going to play under par, right? Out there for Friday morning. I love those 2. So yeah, that's the slip over there for Prize Picks. It's that simple. Thank you for pointing that out, Fred. Those 2 are definitely unders I would take. It's not even there's no even thought process to that. I take him at 70.5. I take him at 71. Time to put a small bet on Chris Kirk. I could see it, right? I love him this week. I think the top 20 bet is probably the way to go, but if you want some outright, I could see it. This tournament has the 10 stroke rule. It does, right? So if it's a -8 leader after 2 rounds, that'll be the cut line will be +2. Thank you, JC. Let me take a look. And appreciate you, boss. That is a huge, by the way. Let's go. So got the Ludwig at 71. I love that. Instant under. Same thing with Max Homa. Both of those are clear values in my opinion. In fact, I think Rory at 70. I know somebody mentioned him before. That is an under I would take. So throw him into the shopping cart for a second slip, I would say. And let me look at the bottom end of the board because I wouldn't hate to take somebody at like 72.5. Like it looks like they have a few guys right down there at 72.5. If they have a super early tee time, which it doesn't look like we have any of the early tee times out there at 72.5. So Prize Picks is kind of guarding against that. So yeah, my top 3 props, they would be the Rory under at 70 and then the unders on Aberg and Max Homa at 71. Let me look at this birdie board. So he also posted those. Thank you again to Legit. You're an absolute legend for doing that. I can log into my VPN when I'm off stream, but when I'm on stream, I need the bandwidth, right, to do the actual live stream. So I can't do that or else you guys would be lagging like absolute hell. And you probably wouldn't want to watch that. But let me keep looking at this. So the birdie board could be a look too for some of those AMT times. In fact, Colin Morikawa at 4 birdies. Ooh, do I want him or do I want Cam Young? Is I guess the question, right? I would go Cam Young over 4 birdies. And I would match that up with the Rory under 70 strokes. Those are definitely 2 leans I would take. Let me look at some of the guys at 3.5. So Sanjay at 3.5. I mean, if he's back to, good Sanjay, that's not a bad spot. Yeah, Sanjay at 3.5. We're going to take in a third slip. Sorry if we're going fast with this, by the way. So sorry if it's hard to keep track of, but it's what we're stuck with what Prize Picks has done to us. We can't even look at the boards. which is kind of embarrassing from their end. The other guys at 3.5, I'm kind of 50-50 on, right? Like, I think Sanjay makes sense, but that, I think it's an 8:55 local tee time that Sanjay M has. And in general, he makes a lot of birdies, right? We mentioned that for Showdown. It's part of the reason that I want to play him for some of my week-long stuff. So I guess he'd be the 5th prop that we can take. So are there any other categories up? So there's strokes. Are there any other stroke stuff I was missing before? Doesn't look like it. Is it just strokes and birdies that they have up, JC? It probably is, right? They probably haven't put up like greens, fairways, that kind of stuff. You're typing down in the Discord right now. You said, yeah, there's more up. So I'm getting the live feed right now because it's listening and I can see it down there. So give us the minute there. Let's answer some questions. Scotty needs to put that putter away. I agree with you, video games. What were the shots gained metrics today? I'm curious. It couldn't have been good, right? He's probably one of the worst putters. I mean, he lost 1.5 strokes, but Rory lost 3 strokes putting, right? So is 1.5 strokes that bad for Scotty? Honestly, to me, that's not that bad. Like, that's just kind of like what he does, right? He's an absolute horseshit putter. I don't know. I'd give it one more round before he puts it away, video games. I'd wait one more. Do I like Colin Connors at 3.5 birdies? I mean, I'd lean over Fred, but I don't love him. Those were a few guys I was looking at. Like Sanjay, the reason why I like him over those two is that he's just a little bit of a better player, right? Like, and I know the recent form might not say that, right? If you look at like the last 24 rounds, but long term, right? Sanjay M is on another caliber, right? Compared to those two, at least until they prove otherwise. Yeah, so I'd still lean over though. I wouldn't be against playing him. I'm probably not going to do it myself, but I wouldn't be against that. That's for sure. Let's see. What else do we got? There we go. There is more posted, actually. There we go. There's the green and regulation stuff. So green and regs were higher today. That's for sure. With the lower winds, the more receptive conditions. And some of the earlier guys like Hideki, even with the bad back and all, he said he was feeling numb with his legs, still hit 14 greens. So like if he can do that, there's probably going to be some value out there. The only early tee time I see is like Tommy Fleetwood at 11.5. And I don't like 12. Like 12 is just too many to take an over on. So that Sanjay M prop with birdies, maybe you take with Tommy Fleetwood over on greens of regulation. That seems like a pretty solid pairing to me. He's a good iron player. He's not an elite iron player, but he's a good iron player. So I'd be willing to do that. And yeah, comparing him to the rest of the board that we have. When's his tee time? Yeah, I think he's at 9:30 a.m. local time tee time. Totally fine with that. So that's what I would go with in terms of prize picks exposure. Just to try and do it off of memory, it was Aberg and Homa 71. It was Rory under 70, Cam Young over 4 birdies. And then it was over 3.5 birdies on Sanjay M mixed up with the over Tommy Fleetwood 11.5 greens. The props that we took for Underdog were a lot of 70.5. So honestly, it felt like the better value was over there on the prize pick side. So I would stick to some of those. In terms of stuff you can take on both sites, I think Xander, right? What was he on prize picks? I got to do a little cross-reference now. Yeah, he's at 70.5 on both sites, right? You could take him right over here on Underdog. Who was another one, right? JT, I know he's at 70.5. You could take him there. Jordan Spieth, I believe, is at that same number over there on prize picks. These would be the main ones I'd be taking in Underdog, right? Try and take the best number available. I know I took a few guys at 70.5 that were at 71 on prize picks. I'm okay with that. Again, these are $1 slips, free slips that I'm entering. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that, right? That you can probably guess how much that means to me in terms of my exposure. But what I'm going to send to my Patreons, right, when I make sure that they enter and what you should probably enter out there for the live stream are the best numbers available, right? So for a 3-man, you could go with these 3. Maybe you mix in another sport to try and get this multiplier a little bit closer to normal. And then a lot of that prize picks value is what I would focus on. Any more live thoughts? Yeah, let's go through it. Hopped in late, having to go to work. Do you have a bounce back candidate or general round 2 advice? Yeah, sure. I'll give you the Spark Notes version. If you want the full take, just rewatch the live stream, but I'll give you the Spark Notes version. Spark Notes version is essentially AMT times, right? See an advantage. If we take a look at the scoring average from today, we split it by wave. The morning guys, which is just the first half of tee times, there aren't any waves, right, when we have a small field like this, was a stroke and a half easier, which is crazy, right? Because there wasn't like an hour, 2 hour gap in between tee times, right? They just sent everyone off of hole one like 10, 15 minutes apart, right? There was no craziness like we have for a regular tour event. And there was still a massive difference when it came to the scoring. SparkNotes version is bounce back candidates are guys going off early, right? They had the short end of the stick today. Tomorrow they get the better conditions, right? They get the boost when it comes to their projections. Take a lot of those guys for bounce backs. Strategy wise for Showdown, you should be taking some of the earlier tee times. And the reason why I'm taking a lot of these players for props is because they have at least an earlier tee time, right? So like Xander, Spieth, for example, right? They're like 10 a.m. But like guys like JT and a few of the other guys we took on prize picks that have even earlier tee times, they're going to get a significant advantage right out there for Friday. So that's the SparkNotes version and what I would do for that. But yeah, let's talk some live golf. If you have any questions for PGA, be my guest, right? We'll still go through all of those. Smash a like button too if you guys are in here right now. But let's talk a little bit of live golf. And if you guys saw the two guys I was taking before, Touche, maybe you already know what I'm going to say here. But there are a few unders I'm taking for props. So I've got Patrick Reed under, Sergio Garcia under. Speaking of which, I did bet Patrick Reed to win this event at 40-1. What is his odds? Yeah, he's still at 40-1 to win this golf tournament, right over there on Hard Rock Bet. So I like him for an under on strokes, and I took him with Sergio Garcia. We talked about the track a little bit yesterday. The fact that it's a real short, right? It's only 6,700 yards. And based on what I heard from a few players, it doesn't seem like it's a bomb and gouge kind of course. It seems like if you do miss far offline, you're going to feel it. Like there are some forests where it's like lost ball territory based on a few quotes from players. They were saying that the volunteers are going to be really important this week for trying to find some of those errant shots. You want guys that from fairway in excel. Now, the prototype for that on the PGA Tour is Webb Simpson. At golf courses where off the tee is de-emphasized, Webb Simpson wins at like a 30% clip. It's like the RBC Heritage, it's like the RSM Classic. It's all like those, old fuck golf courses where guys just, can be 45 years old and win golf tournaments. It's that type of event. So the reason why I took Patrick Reed and Sergio for these unders, we have no idea how this course is going to play, by the way. It's a par 70. It's literally never been played for professional golf before. The reason why I took these two unders is that these two tend to play really well at courses where driver's not all that important. First off, Sergio, maybe the best iron player of this generation, except for Scotty. Scotty's probably passing him, right? But Sergio was like the generation before. So we'll give that nod out there to Serge. But Patrick Reed, right, at tracks on the PGA Tour where driving wasn't important, he dominated, right? He like kind of like Webb Simpson was like that 30% win rate guy at those type of golf courses. Like Pebble Beach, for example, like he won that before he went over to Live Golf in a really strong field. These two I took for unders. Main idea being is it's a 6,700 yard golf course. I think they're going to tear it up. I mean, that's short as fuck. I mean, that is like hitting an iron off of every single tee and having wedges into like half the holes. If you hit driver, if you hit a 3-wood and you're accurate with it, you might even be able to drive a lot of the greens. In fact, there should be 2 drivable par 4s out there on the golf course. I'd go very light unit wise though, right? Like this isn't nearly as confident a play as what I have for some of that PGA stuff. But yeah, it's an under on Reed and under on Sergio Garcia. I believe he's at the same number, right? Both of these guys over on prize picks. That's what I would take for like a little dabble on exposure. It starts in 3 hours, right? It starts tonight out there for round 1. I would wait until round 2 and 3, right? To go out there and enter anything for higher dollar, right? For higher units. But this is what I'm doing for round 1, right? Without having a lot of that information. Again, I would caution against using anything high unit wise. In terms of Puerto Rico Open, I guess I'll ask chat. Do they have anything on prize picks for that? I know over here on Underdog, they don't have anything for the Puerto Rico Open. I'm assuming they probably don't, right? It's I don't know if anyone's actually watching that golf tournament this week. What I'll look at for the Puerto Rico Open is the live odds in terms of that leaderboard. And I didn't bet anything for this golf tournament. In fact, I have no horses. I have no exposure whatsoever when it comes to the Puerto Rico Open. But I kind of want to throw a dart throw on an outright. It's the degenerates, talking to me right now, wanting to go out there and bet an outright. They suspended round 1, so they didn't even finish play. Oh boy. So this is greasy. I want to find somebody that's like -2 or -3 that I think could make a run. So Aaron Rye would be one. So okay, maybe it's Aaron Rye. Oh, Daniel Berger. Are they going to sucker me in? It might be D Berg. You know, what is Daniel Berger's odds? He's probably, yeah, he's like what, 30 to 1? What do they have him at over here on BetMGM or whoever the partner is at PGA Tour? Oh, they don't have the betting odds up. Let me bring up DraftKings. I at least want to make sure I'm getting decent odds before I take a random dart throw on a golf tournament that I'm not actually watching and don't care about. But if I'm gonna bet anybody for that golf tournament, it might as well be my boy D Berg, who's one of my favorite players in the world. So let me share my screen. I brought up DraftKings so I could do a little line shopping. That's no, wrong golf tournament, but let's go to golf odds. Puerto Rico Open. What is Berger on Prize Picks? Not Prize Picks on DraftKings. He's 28 to 1, 30 to 1 on Hard Rock Bet. Sign me up. So as soon as I get off live stream here, I'm going to log in, enter this prop. Feels like a pretty decent lean to me if you're asking me. Let's see, anything else? Outright, you've got Chi Rodriguez for the Puerto Rico Open for an outright. What's his current standing? I have no idea who that is. If I'm going to be completely honest with you. If you're talking about like Chi, who even is that? Is he even in the field? I don't see anyone with the last name Rod in it over here in the field. I don't know, man. I don't know who you're talking about. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for this live stream, though. If there's any last-second questions, go ahead and let me know down in chat. But the main thing I'll leave you with is play the weather edge, right? There was a 1.5 stroke advantage today. It might not be a stroke and a half tomorrow, but what I can assure you with almost pure confidence, like 100% sure confidence, is that the morning guys are going to get the better conditions, right? That's just how it works down here in Florida. Worked like that pretty much every single round over there at the Cognizant Classic. Even when we had rain in the afternoon, right, in that afternoon wave, got some softer conditions, that round at the Cognizant still played harder, right, out there in the PM hours. So it's just part of Florida golf, right, having that AM advantage. Lean into it as much as you can and try and take advantage out there for your Friday exposure. That's all we got, though, guys. Appreciate all the support here in the channel. Go ahead, smash that like button on the way out of here, and let's go ahead and get after it. You're saying You're saying 3 decades ago? Yeah, is that Chi Rodriguez that you're talking about, right? The Hall of Fame golfer? That's what I was about to say. So, yeah, 3 decades ago, he was the winner. I got you, Curtis. Best of luck out there for your exposure, guys. And I'll catch you guys for the round 3 and 4 streams. They're going to be up there in Orlando. It's going to be on not 100% of a setup. I might even just be on a laptop going out there and doing our live streams. So excuse the video quality, maybe even the audio quality. But we'll be doing the same things for rounds 3 and 4. We'll have a good idea on course conditions because I'll be out there for the last 3 rounds. So let's take advantage. So looking forward to it. Appreciate the support, like I said, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow.